Glenn Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
Trump giving his acceptance speech through prison glass.
Yep.
And what on cue last week? The head of the RNC, the story came out, is planning, just in case, that he gives his speech from prison to accept the nomination. I can't even believe where we are, Glenn, in this country. So you have said, as many analysts have said, in assessing an appropriate sentence, judges try to determine if a convicted defendant accepts responsibility for their crimes. Trump won't. It's time to apply the sentencing principles of specific and general deterrence and sentence Trump to prison for his 34 felonies, not to mention the 10 gag order violations, right?
Yeah, he's going to get a prison term, and we'll talk in a minute about whether that prison term will be stayed, in other words, paused while he appeals or not. But here's the thing, Steph, hundreds of times at sentencing hearings, I argued, Your Honor, acceptance of responsibility is the first step on the road to rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And if a defendant refuses to take that first step, then his rehabilitative prospects are very low, and that should increase his prison term. This is not rocket science.
Yeah.
This is human nature and the principles of sentencing. I believe Judge Merchan will impose a period of incarceration. What I don't know is if he will stay it pending appeal or not. I hope the hell he doesn't, because without punishment, everything we have just suffered through, the entire run-up to the trial, all of Donald Trump's violence-inducing rhetoric and posts, and a verdict, a guilty verdict, it will all be for naught if he is not punished by having to spend some time in prison.
Yep, and sentencing is on 7/11, and then if the judge also rules we all get orange Slurpees, I'm going to see my skit will have come true. Okay, but you make there's a story I know as a prosecutor you have got to talk about. Jury denialism. Journalist identifies new front in the GOP's war on the rule of law. As you said, remember when some Republicans were celebrating the fact that a gentleman designated juror number 2 had made it onto Trump's jury after saying he got his news, quote unquote, from Truth Social? Matt Gaetz even posted LFG, meaning let's effing go, juror number 2, exclamation point. You said, I say thank you, juror number 2, for taking your jury oaths seriously.
Yeah.
But this is now what they're left with. Not only these ridiculous threats to defund the entire state of New York or the entire Justice Department, but the jury's at fault, right? This is the main line of attack is the jurors had it out for Trump from the start because they come from a Democratic leading city. As Chris always says, then don't do your crime.
Right.
Wherever you're being prosecuted. Trump's lawyers vetted prospective jurors, weeding out those whose social media posts expose them as Trump haters. One of the seated jurors says he watched Fox News. Another said he followed Trump on Truth Social. A third said she liked religious podcasts. One said he disagreed with some of Trump's policies but agreed with others. Another said she appreciated that President Trump speaks his mind. The most common pattern among the jurors was a lack of strong feelings about politics. Mm-hmm. But here they go, with dismissing the entire 12 jurors because it took place in New York City.
The Republicans are the pro-crime party, and they're the anti-rule of law party, the anti-accountability, anti-criminal justice system, and as you say, anti-jury. Donald Trump's lawyers picked this jury. They were fully involved and engaged in jury selection. They struck the people they believed couldn't be fair. They exercised what are called their peremptory strikes. They got to strike 10 more people for no reason at all because they didn't like them. So they selected this jury.
Yeah.
So you know what? You have to live with the results of the jury you selected. And it made me, pretty angry when you see a guy like Matt Gaetz who is encouraging a juror to disregard their oath.
Yeah.
Oh, you get some news from Truth Social. LFG juror number 2, let's go, acquit Donald Trump. I mean, again, this is all lawless insanity.
You retweeted the headline, Jim Jordan proposes defunding Trump prosecutors. You said obstructing justice has become Jordan's full-time job. He yammers about the DOJ being weaponized against Republicans as the DOJ busily prosecutes Democrat Bob Menendez, Democrat Henry Cuellar, and Hunter Biden, son of a sitting Democratic president. Jordan operates in a fact-free environment. Mm-hmm. I mean, and people can bring that up and they just, it doesn't fit their narrative, right?
Yeah, Steph, Jim Jordan's weaponization of the Department of Justice against Republicans, right? His snipe hunt that he's on. Boy, I'll tell you, DOJ is not really doing a good job of weaponizing against Republicans. They're prosecuting Democrat after Democrat after Democrat. Of course, The Republicans don't complain about any of those being witch hunts. But,
Yeah.
when I say Jordan's full-time job is obstruction, let's face it, Jim Jordan's got nothing but time on his hands. He's been in Congress since 2006, never had one bill passed, right? It's like a teacher who never taught a student or a carpenter who never built anything. That is who Jim Jordan is.
Yep. This headline tells you everything you need to know about the difference in the parties. Biden rules out pardoning his son Hunter, pledges to accept the outcome of the trial, this ridiculous trial on a charge that no one would ever be charged with. And if his name wasn't Biden. And Glenn, can I just say, this trial is so sad to put this family, after all they've been through this again. As anyone who had loved someone that struggled with addiction, this is just disgusting display, what they're doing, if I might.
And that's one reason I think it may not result in a guilty verdict. We could spend an hour, and I will today, on one of my Justice Matters videos, unraveling the entire Hunter Biden case.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he didn't commit a crime. It looks like he lied about being a drug user or an addict. But I think jury nullification may make a showing, and I'm not celebrating or embracing it.
Yeah.
I don't believe in jury nullification.
Yeah.
I think jurors have to decide the case on the facts and the law, not on their feelings about other issues that might come into play. But we all know what it's like to struggle with addiction, have a family member or a friend, somebody close to us, struggling with addiction. And it feels like the prosecutors may be overplaying their hand here, winning sympathy for Hunter Biden. I'm not convinced it's going to be a guilty verdict.
Yeah. Glenn, God, so sorry. So much to get to real quick. Supreme Court, I don't know if I asked you this last week. Can this happen? Can the Supreme Court overturn the hush money election interference? Okay, go ahead.
Well, here's the answer to that question is the Supreme Court can do whatever the darn Supreme Court wants to do because there is nobody above them to stop them. Can they do it legitimately? I don't believe so, but they can do it illegitimately, just the way they said an adjudicated insurrectionist can still be president, even though the Constitution says he can't. Just like they revoked women's constitutional privacy rights, just like they are sanctioning business discrimination as long as it's cloaked in religious piety, just like they're putting minorities on an uneven playing field forever by trying to kill affirmative action in higher education. They can do whatever they damn well please, and they have. So when you ask me, is there any legitimate basis for the Supreme Court to overturn Donald Trump's New York conviction? The answer is no, but they might do it anyway.
Okay, while I'm in the midst of my gastrointestinal distress, your tweet, appeals court in Georgia sets a leisurely litigation pace in Trump's RICO case. Yeah. This is the other one that just burns me up. Because Fani Willis's private life has nothing to do with the guilt of Trump or this trial. The fact that they're able to do this and slow this way is just insane to me. Please.
We need to reform our criminal justice system in lots of ways. One of the ways is if we're going to provide for endless appeals, we need to put them on not just expedited tracks, but you have 2 weeks to file, 2 weeks for argument, and 2 weeks later you will get a result from the appeals court. There's no reason this can't be done rather than letting this stuff linger endlessly. Let's reform our system in ways we know it needs to be reformed.
Two more real quick. Trump's attorneys asked judge to lift gag order while claiming it has done irreparable First Amendment harm. So what do you think of that? Because obviously he continues to incite violence. Do you know how many hanging threats Judge Merchan has gotten already? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's great consolation to the witnesses and the jurors that they could be protected against Donald Trump's violence-inducing rhetoric up until the time they delivered a verdict. And then all bets are off, and he can sick his MAGA crew on witnesses, jurors, and others. That doesn't make any sense. And I think Judge Merchan will keep the gag order in place at least through the sentencing date.
Okay, let's end on happy news. Steve Bannon going to prison. Yay, bye-bye, bye-bye. However, just this headline, because I thought your head would explode. Steve Bannon wants Don Jr. at the top of the list to become Trump's next attorney general.
I assumed it was going to be Stephen Miller, and I'm not joking about that. I mean, he's promised to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his perceived enemies. Take him at his word. But let's finish with the good news, right? The little bit of silver lining behind the big orange dark cloud, because you got Peter Navarro in prison. You got Bannon ordered into prison, and I was in court yesterday watching that hearing. July 1st, Bannon goes to prison. Donald Trump will be sentenced to prison, in my opinion, on July 11th. That feels like accountability trending, at least in some ways.
Yep. Okay. All right. Listen, Glenn Kirschner will join us, Boston sexy liberal. And if I was a betting person, I'd say there's more sexy. I'm not. My betting limit's $1, Glenn. But if I had to bet, I would bet we'll see you at more.
It's a safe bet.
Love you, Glenn Kirschner. Thank you.
Love you, Steph.
Yes.
You are invited to Stephanie Miller's Sexy Liberal Save the World Tour. It's the political comedy event of the year, and it's coming to a city near you. Join Stephanie Miller, the queen of progressive talk radio, along with Hal Sparks, John Fugelsang, and the comedy duo Frangela, mocking all the fascists and trolls for a tour that is hilarious, inspiring, and deeply offensive to just the right people. It's an all-new tour with all new guests and a side-splitting evening of stand-up. Stephanie Miller's Sexy Liberal Save the World Tour.